Hi guys, welcome back to ScoutTube. My name is Pierce, I'm from BSA Troop 680, and today we're going to be going over the second part of our 3-part series on the Tenderfoot Rank. Leave a like and subscribe down below to show your support, and without further ado, let's get into this.
Requirement 4 is all about basic first aid. 4A tells you to demonstrate the first aid for the following: cuts and scrapes, blisters on the hand and foot, minor burns and scalds, bites or stings of insects and ticks, venomous snake bites, nosebleeds, frostbite and sunburns, and choking. Let's unpack these one at a time. To treat cuts and scrapes, clean the wound as best as you can with soap and water if possible, and disinfect the wound if you have an alcohol wipe or something similar. If the cut or scrape is fairly minor, you should be good to go. Just let it air dry. You really only need to put on a band-aid if you think that the wound needs that extra layer of surface protection against dirt or being hit again. If the wound is more severe, wrap full bandages around the wound and apply compression either with your hands or with tapes or straps until the bleeding stops. Keep applying more bandages to the wound if it soaks through the layers. Don't remove the soaked bandage, as this will just open up the wound again. If the bleeding does not stop shortly, seek medical attention. On to hotspots and blisters. Blisters happen when a consistent amount of friction is placed against the skin for a substantial period of time. You can get them just about anywhere, but common cases include blisters on the feet from hiking in poor-fitting shoes, or blisters on the hands from not wearing gloves during canoeing or during conservation projects. Before you actually get a blister, you will likely first get a hotspot. A hotspot is a red and tender area of skin that is the precursor to a full-blown blister. Treat the hotspot before it becomes a blister. The hotspot will not get better if you don't treat it. The best course of action is to apply some type of barrier over the hotspot or blister. Many people use duct tape or moleskin for hotspots, but many of us found out that there is a product called leukotape that is super sticky and flexible. Many long-distance hikers feel is superior to duct tape or moleskin. Whatever you use, you are trying to prevent any further friction to the hotspot area and therefore prevent blisters from forming. If you do see blisters already on the skin, I feel really bad for you because they can be painful. If you are pretty sure that you can't keep the area clean and dry for the duration of your outing, then do not pop the blisters. Doing so puts you at risk of a serious infection. You should be carrying a first aid kit on you at all times when on scout outings, and included in this should be a thick furry tape material called moleskin. To treat blisters, you must apply that moleskin to the affected area. To do so, follow these steps. 1. Gently clean and dry the area around the blister. 2. Cut a round piece of moleskin that's about 3/4 inch larger than your blister. 3. You should then cut a hole out of the moleskin so that the tape looks like a donut. The hole in the middle should be the size of your blister. You can then easily cut the hole out by folding the moleskin in half and cutting out the circle. Then, when you unfold it, you should have one blister-sized hole in the center of the moleskin. 4. Remove the backing from the adhesive side and place the moleskin over your blister, aligning your blister with the hole you made. The hole is needed so that you reduce the pressure and friction you place directly on it, and the tape forms that raised barrier. We here at ScoutTube would like to thank Healthline for this information. The link to their article from which we derived our information on blisters will be in the description. On to first-degree burns. First-degree burns are superficial and often appear tender and red. You can get them from relatively minor actions, such as by standing around the sun without sunscreen or accidentally touching a hot stove. First-degree burns are usually not very serious because they only affect the outermost layer of the skin. With first-degree burns, treatment usually consists of pain management. Apply cool compresses and run the burn under cool water. At night, apply aloe vera gel for comfort. Keep the burn clean if there are any skin breaks. It will heal on its own if properly taken care of. Next, we have bites and stings. Let's start off with tick bites. Ticks are small creatures with a hard shell that burrow into the skin. Typically, you don't notice being bitten until after the fact, so make sure to check commonly affected areas on the body after spending substantial periods of time in the woods. Check inside your socks, under the waistband of your pants, and around your neckline. Once ticks get onto your body, they like to make their way into the hairline and burrow under your skin. To remove ticks, use tweezers to grab the tick as close to your skin as possible and gently pull until it comes loose. Don't pull or squeeze too hard, or you risk decapitating the tick and leaving its jaws inside you, which would require more invasive procedures to dislodge it. Ticks also carry blood-borne diseases, so you would want to avoid getting an infection by not squeezing its guts into the bite. Next, insect bites. There are many different types of insects that bite humans for various different reasons, but most of them aren't really dangerous. With that said, you should still know the proper prevention measures and first aid for them, as they are often incredibly irritating if left untreated. To prevent insect bites like mosquitoes, ticks, and others, we recommend a product called picaridin. It was common that everyone used DEET, but DEET is a harsh chemical that isn't super good for your skin. Smells bad, leaves a sticky residue, and if DEET gets on your synthetic clothes or camping gear, the DEET can actually melt the fabric. Picaridin is applied to skin and clothes just like DEET and needs to be reapplied per the instructions on the bottle. There's also a chemical called permethrin that you can apply to your clothes either as a spray or a soak that is highly effective against biting bugs and doesn't stink at all. To remedy most insect bites, remove the stinger by scraping it out using a flat object, like a credit card. Don't squeeze the stinger under any circumstances. Apply an ice pack to reduce swelling. If the victim starts exhibiting swelling or having problems breathing, treat them for anaphylactic shock immediately. Call 911 or your local emergency number, treat hurry cases, and if the person had a kit for dealing with this sort of ailment, put it to use. If you don't have an EpiPen on hand, then giving the person a non-drowsy antihistamine will help. Let's move on to snake bites. Snakes come in venomous and non-venomous varieties. Getting bitten by a snake is dangerous, regardless of whether the snake was venomous or not, but the first step in treating a snake bite is to try and identify the snake that bit the victim. Most people have a phone or camera with them, so the best thing to do is to take a photo of the snake so someone can identify it later. However, do not do this at risk to yourself or others. Identifying the snake would allow you to determine whether or not the snake was venomous and could allow a physician to administer proper treatment if required. But the last thing you need in this situation is more victims. Venomous snakes in North America can be identified by bright colors or a triangularly shaped head. If you can't tell if the snake was venomous or not, assume it is. It may be a life and death situation without you even realizing it. After identifying whether or not the snake was venomous, you can go about conducting first aid. Regardless of whether you think the snake was venomous or not, the bite should be considered a medical emergency, as even non-venomous snake bites run the risk of a life-threatening infection like any other puncture wound would. For non-venomous snake bites, clean the wound and apply an antibiotic ointment if the victim is not allergic. Cover the wound with a sterile bandage. For venomous snake bites, a priority to consider is to keep the victim calm and still. The venom from a snake moves through the lymphatic system before it moves into the bloodstream, and because lymph moves very slowly while one is immobile, keeping the victim still is very important. With that said, if the bite is on an extremity, keep the extremity level 2 or below the heart. Wash the wound site and, if necessary, remove things that may constrict swelling, such as rings, watches, necklaces, etc. Another thing to do is to use a pen to make a circle around the wound and mark the time of the circle. Then, every 5 to 10 minutes, draw another circle another time. This will help doctors determine how fast the venom is spreading. Again, use a camera or phone if that helps keep a record. Seek immediate medical attention and make sure to keep the victim calm while treating for shock. Moving on, we have nosebleeds. Nosebleeds that aren't results of traumatic injuries are minor issues that happen all the time, but it's best to know the treatment options. To treat a nosebleed, lean the victim forward and have them pinch high on the nose, directly below the bone. Have them apply pressure to their upper lip and hold a cold compress to the nose. Hold this position until the bleeding stops. Next, frostbite and sunburn. Let's talk about sunburns first. Sunburns are first degree, or possibly second degree, burns that result from extended unprotected exposure to the sun's radiation. To prevent sunburns, you are recommended to wear sunscreen, sunglasses, protective clothing that covers your arms and legs, a neck buff, and a brimmed hat while in the sun for long periods of time. Sunburns should be treated like any other first-degree burn. Submerge the affected area in cool water and apply aloe vera gel at night. Frostbite is quite a bit more serious than a simple sunburn. In technical terms, frostbite is a state in which the fluids in the skin get cold enough to freeze. If left untreated, this can lead to some very nasty health consequences, but there are several warning signs to let you know something is going wrong beforehand. Early symptoms include numbness in the extremities. Grayish-white patches on the skin are a sign that things are getting more serious. You may have seen pictures of extreme frostbite where the skin turns black. This is a serious case where the skin is literally frozen and dyed. Frostbite can be treated by moving the victim into a shelter such as a tent or building. If an ear or cheek is affected, remove one of your gloves and rub that area with your hand. If a hand is affected, tuck it into their clothing against the warmer skin of the abdomen. If the frostbite becomes very severe, get the person into dry clothing. Wrap the affected area in a blanket or other insulating object and rush them to a doctor. If there is no risk of refreezing, soak the affected area in lukewarm, not hot, water until the area returns to a normal color. If the frostbitten area is on a hand or foot, separate the fingers and toes with gauze or loose bandage. Do not warm the victim with extreme heat sources like fires or industrial heaters, as you run the risk of burning the tender frostbitten tissues. In some extreme cases, the affected area will be painful to the touch, so you won't be able to rub it. The key is to slowly warm the part back up. Lastly, choking. Choking occurs when the airways to the lungs are obstructed, which causes restricted or completely blocked breathing. This happens most often due to eating recklessly, and by quite literally biting off more than you can chew. If you see someone grabbing their throat, which is a natural response to choking, ask someone to call 911 or the local emergency number and let them know you know first aid for the situation and that you're here to help. If the victim can cough or speak, encourage them to cough up what they're choking on. If the victim cannot speak or breathe or is making high-pitched noises, you need to take action. Here are the steps to take as described by the 2019 Scout Handbook. 1. If the person is conscious, stand behind him or her and place your arm across the chest and shoulder. Lean the person forward and, with the heel of your hand, firmly strike the back between the shoulder blades 5 times. If the victim still cannot breathe, continue to steps 2 and 3. 2. Stand behind the victim and position your arms around his or her waist. Make a fist with one hand and place the thumb side against the person's body just above the navel and below the rib cage. 3. Perform up to 5 abdominal thrusts by thrusting your clasped hands inwards and upwards with enough force to pop loose the object that is blocking the airways. Repeat steps 1 through 3 until the object is coughed up, medical help arrives, or the person becomes unconscious. If the person becomes unconscious, lower him or her to the ground. Put on gloves if possible and check for objects in the mouth. Remove the object with a sweep of the finger if found. If you don't see the object, tilt the person's head using a head tilt chin lift. Then give 30 chest compressions and 2 rescue breaths. Continue checking for foreign objects and giving chest compressions until help arrives or the person's breathing is restored. End quote. Now, remember that it's probably best to hand off the chest compression task to someone who is actually trained in CPR, or someone who got the first aid merit badge if in a scouting context. But if there's no one more qualified to do the job, I suggest you do your best with what you know. Now, on to 4B. Alright, 4B. Requirement 4B asks us to name the hazardous plants of the area we live in. Now, this is a tricky one to teach as it is area specific, but here are a few ones common to the United States, as well as their characteristics and treatment options. Poison ivy, oak, and sumac. All of these cause rashes on contact due to an oil they secrete. If you get a rash from one of these plants, you are recommended to apply a corticosteroid cream every few days after the incident, and to take oatmeal baths when possible to relieve the discomfort. Take diphenhydramine or another oral antihistamine to deal with allergic reactions. Resist scratching your skin, as doing so will spread the oils and make everything way worse. One lotion that people highly recommend is called Techno. It's expensive, but if you have a bad case of poison ivy or poison oak, no price is too high to relieve the itching. Daffodils. Believe it or not, the daffodil is actually very toxic when ingested. They can often be mistaken for onions during the pre-flowering stage of their development. Symptoms include vomiting, skin irritation, and diarrhea. Treatment includes drinking lots of water or milk. If symptoms worsen or last a substantial period of time, watch for dehydration. If signs of dehydration pop up, seek immediate medical attention. Mistletoes. The American mistletoe is mildly poisonous and most exposures in the U.S. are in children. Symptoms usually manifest as gastrointestinal aches. Treatment for mistletoe poisoning is much like that for daffodils. Drink lots of water and wait it out. I encourage you to look into the poisonous plants that are most prevalent in your area and how to treat their poisons. It's great information to know. Let's keep going. The next requirement, 4C, asks how you can prevent incidents that we talked about in 4A and 4B. I'll go through each of these individually. To prevent cuts and scrapes, generally exercise caution and pay attention. Be careful with sharp objects like knives, saws, and axes. Watch your step while moving over rugged terrain, and take as few unnecessary risks as possible while doing so. Wearing shoes around camp or when wading in a shallow lake is also a good way to protect your feet. To prevent hot spots and blisters, wear well-fitted shoes when hiking and gloves while working with tools. Break leather boots in on short day hikes and gradually increase the mileage to prevent wearing down the skin on your feet and causing blisters. To prevent first-degree burns, pay attention to nearby hot objects like stoves or campfires. In the case of campfires, keep track of where the wind is blowing to keep from being showered in sparks. To prevent sunburns, wear sunscreen, sunglasses, and protective clothing when going out into the sun for prolonged periods of time. Try to stick to this shade if possible. To prevent insect or tick bites, wear bug spray such as DEET, permethrin, and picaridin, and stay away from stagnant water as many types of insects breed there. Wear a hat to prevent tick bites on the scalp and tuck your pant legs in your socks if you are walking through high brush. To prevent snake bites, check around and under where you intend to sit down or where you intend to collect firewood for snakes. If you do find a snake, back away slowly and it will probably leave you alone. Do not touch or interact in any way with the snake, even if it appears dead, as they may stay still in order to attract prey and find an opportunity to strike. To prevent nosebleeds, blow your nose as little as possible and gently. Wear face protection during activities in which your nose or head could get injured. Always follow the instructions that come with nasal decongestions. To prevent frostbite, wear warm and loose clothing when entering exceedingly cold or wet conditions. Wear a hat that fully covers the ears, such as a beanie or ushanka. Stay hydrated and eat well. To prevent choking, eat slowly and thoughtfully. The most common cause of choking outside of allergic reactions is from eating too fast and choking on large pieces of food. To prevent poisoning from plants, educate yourself on the common poisonous plants in the area you are hiking in. If at all possible, do not eat the plants around you. If you must, eat plants that you know won't harm you and that are hard to mistake for poisonous ones. Moving on, we have 4D. Requirement 4D asks you to prepare a personal first aid kit. This is a lot simpler than you may think. It just requires a few things you should probably have around the house anyway. Here's a sample kit list, adjusted for one person. Remember to include any emergency medications, like an EpiPen, if you have a condition that may warrant their use. The first aid kit should include the following. 1 pair of latex gloves. 2 packs of antiseptic wipes. Tweezers. 1 roller bandage. A medical thermometer, usually found in the group first aid kit. 5 packs of antibiotic ointments. Aspirin and or ibuprofen. Hydrocortisone cream. 1 ammonia anti-itch stick. for insect bites, sterile gauze, athletic tape or leukotape, and a copy of your medical history and current prescriptions. Before prancing off into the great unknown, make sure to adjust what you bring in the aid kit to the current situation. If it's going to be cold, you might want to bring an emergency blanket, for example. Also, make sure you know how and when to use the things in your kit, and to add and replace items in the kit when needed. With all that said, let's transition to Requirement 5.
Thanks for watching part 2 of our 3-part series on the Tenderfoot Rank. Please leave a like and subscribe to show your support. And stay tuned for part 3, where we'll be going over requirements 5 through 11.